you can find things online that predate the internet. Probably the best example of that is Project Gutenberg, where you can find a lot of public domain books. But you can also find film reviews, book reviews of things, Hemingway novels, films from the 1920s or 30s. And if you look at the film criticism of the mid 20th century, one name stands out, and he's probably the most well known film critic of that era, and he was sort of the Roger Ebert of that era. And his name was Bosley Crowther, and he wrote for the New York Times. Um, this was a time before film critics had a name. One of the things in the last question we're talking about Roger Ebert that I failed to mention is Roger Ebert and his partner Gene Siskel helped make film critics themselves a brand name. It used to be no matter how famous a film critic was, he was always or she was always representing something. Bosley Crowther was the most famous film critic in the mid 20th century. But when people didn't talk about a Bosley Crowther review, they talked about the New York Times review. Same thing like Pauline Kael. She might have, did she write for a New York magazine or New Yorker?
Yeah, New Yorker.
The New Yorker, yeah. They didn't talk about a Pauline Kael review. They talked about the New Yorker review, which was de facto Kael. But so people like the Kaels, people like the Crowthers. They would go on. They'd have their little small purviews. They'd have their little axes to grind. And as you detailed in your Woody Allen book, someone like a Kael, if she was in a particularly bad mood and she was on the rag that day, and she went and saw a Steve McQueen, the white American actor, not the black filmmaker, a Steve McQueen film in the '60s, she might rip that film even if it was a good heist, but simply because she was on the rag, and she would justify that. Someone like a Bosley Crowther, if if a film offended his sensibilities in some way, maybe like a James Bond film because of the sex shown, which at the time, was deemed scandalous, he might just write a review that ripped the whole thing without even approaching it.